The rain fell softly over Seattle, painting the city in shades of gray and gold. Emma Wilson sat near her apartment window, a cup of tea cooling beside her. The streets below glowed with the reflections of lights and umbrellas passing by. To anyone watching, she looked peaceful, a woman who had everything under control. But inside, Emma felt the quiet ache of a life that looked fine but never felt full. At 32, Emma's world was neatly arranged. She worked as a graphic designer in a small but respected firm. Her coworkers liked her, her boss trusted her, and her friends often said she was doing great. Yet, when the evenings came, when she turned off her laptop and the city grew still, she felt something missing, something small but constant, like a faint echo she couldn't silence. She had always dreamed of a love that wasn't about grand gestures or perfect words. She wanted something honest, someone who'd see her for who she really was, quiet, thoughtful, sometimes afraid, but full of warmth she rarely showed. She had dated before, but most men seemed to like the version of her that smiled easily and talked softly. Few took time to understand the silence between her words. That Friday afternoon, her best friend Mia called. "You're coming tonight," she said before Emma could answer. "There's a local art show near the harbor. You need a break from staring at pixels all week." Emma laughed weakly, trying to find an excuse, but Mia's tone left no room for argument. "Fine," Emma sighed, "but only for an hour." When evening came, she stood before her mirror, unsure of what to wear. She chose a simple navy dress, nothing fancy, and left her hair loose over her shoulders. She didn't want attention, she only wanted to feel like herself. As she drove through the misty streets, she thought about how her life had turned into a list of routines: work, errands, quiet weekends, and the occasional dinner with friends. She wondered when she'd last done something that made her heart race. The art gallery was small but full of life. Music played softly, and people walked between the displays, holding glasses of wine and murmuring about the paintings. Emma stayed near the back, quietly admiring the work. Most of it felt too loud or too abstract for her mood. But then she stopped in front of one painting that pulled her in completely. It showed a harbor at dusk.com, waters, soft reflections, and a lonely boat drifting near the pier. The colors weren't bright, but they carried warmth, a golden light fading into blue. It felt peaceful, yet strangely sad, like it was hiding a story. Emma stood there, unable to look away. Then she heard a voice behind her, low, calm, and thoughtful. "It's strange, isn't it? The calmest scenes always hide the deepest storms." She turned, startled, and found a man standing beside her. He looked to be in his mid-30s, tall, with slightly messy brown hair and eyes that seemed to hold both curiosity and calm. He smiled gently, sensing her hesitation. "Sorry," he said. "Didn't mean to interrupt. It's just that painting feels too quiet to be simple." Emma smiled back faintly. "No, you're right. It's peaceful, but there's something lonely about it, too." Kay nodded. "That's what I thought. I'm Daniel, by the way." "Emma," she said softly. They both turned toward the painting again, standing side by side in silence. Normally, Emma hated small talk, but this silence didn't feel awkward. It felt natural, like two people seeing the same truth without needing to explain it. Daniel finally asked, "Do you like art?" "Sometimes," she said. "I like things that feel honest. Paintings, books, even music. Anything that doesn't try too hard to be perfect." He smiled, looking amused. "That's a good answer. Most people say they like modern art without knowing why." Emma chuckled. "I guess I'm too simple for that." "Simple is underrated," he said with a shrug. "It takes courage to just be." For some reason, those words stayed in her head. She didn't know why. But there was something about Daniel's tone that made her feel seen, not for how she looked or spoke, but for something quieter inside her. As they walked slowly through the rest of the gallery, Daniel told her he was a photographer. He had come to Seattle for a small exhibition of his own work next month. He traveled often, capturing places that most people ignored. Small towns, old train stations, quiet streets before dawn. "I like the beauty in ordinary things," he said. "They have stories even when no one listens." Emma found herself listening to him more closely than she'd listened to anyone in months. There was no show-off confidence in his voice, no rush to impress. He spoke simply, with a kind of gentle honesty that felt rare. When the event ended, Mia came over, surprised to see Emma actually talking to someone. Daniel offered to walk them out, and as they stood outside under the misty drizzle, he turned to Emma. "If you ever want to see the city from a different lens," he said, holding up his camera slightly, "I know a few good spots." Emma hesitated for a second, then smiled. "Maybe I'll take you up on that." He grinned. "I'll hold you to it." As Daniel walked away, Emma stood there, watching him disappear into the rain. Mia nudged her. "Who was that?" Emma shook her head, still half lost in thought. "Just someone who noticed the same painting I did." But deep inside, something had shifted, something small but powerful. It wasn't love, not yet. It was the quiet recognition of a soul that somehow spoke the same language as hers. That night, Emma sat by her window again. The rain had turned into a fine mist, glowing under the city lights. She thought of Daniel's words, "The calmest scenes hide the deepest storms." She wondered if that was true about people too. Maybe beneath her calm surface, she'd been waiting for something to stir, something real. She didn't know what would happen next, or if she'd ever see him again. But for the first time in a long while, the emptiness inside her didn't feel so heavy. It felt like space, open, alive, waiting for something to fill it. As she closed her eyes, she smiled softly. That day had been ordinary, yet different. She didn't realize it yet, but life had quietly started to change, just enough to whisper, "This is what you always wanted, and maybe, just maybe, you've found the beginning of it today." The rain kept falling, washing the city clean for tomorrow, tomorrow she suddenly couldn't wait to see. The days after the art gallery felt different for Emma. The world looked the same. Gray Seattle skies, busy crosswalks, the smell of coffee in every corner, but something inside her had changed. She didn't know why meeting Daniel stayed in her mind. Maybe it was the calm in his voice, or how he had looked at the same painting and seen what she saw, peace mixed with quiet sadness. She wasn't used to people noticing the same small things she did. A week passed before she saw him again. It happened by accident, or at least that's what she told herself. She had stopped by her favorite cafe near work, the one with the creaky wooden chairs and warm lights, when she noticed him sitting near the window with his camera bag beside him. Daniel looked up, smiled like he'd been expecting her, and waved her over. "You again," he said with a grin. "Starting to think Seattle is smaller than I thought." Emma laughed. "Or maybe we just noticed the same places." They spent that afternoon talking over coffee. It was easy almost. Daniel asked her about her design work, and she asked him about his photography. He told her he loved taking pictures early in the morning when the city was half asleep. "That's when everything feels real," he said. "People haven't put their masks on yet." Kama nodded, understanding completely. She often worked late at night for the same reason. No noise, no rush, just her and her thoughts. They exchanged numbers, promising to share ideas for creative spots around the city. But what started as casual meetings turned into a quiet rhythm of companionship. They met again for a photo walk through Pike Place Market, where Daniel captured the laughter of strangers while Emma admired the colors of the stalls. They sat by the waterfront talking about everything and nothing. Sometimes they'd just walk without speaking much. Emma liked that about him. He didn't fill the silence with unnecessary words. He listened, and when he did speak, his words carried weight. He once said, "People talk too much to hide what they really feel." Silence, though. Silence tells the truth. Emma didn't realize how much she missed being around someone who made her feel calm. Daniel's presence was steady, not demanding, not complicated. He wasn't trying to impress her. He was simply there. And that, somehow, was what made her heart notice him more each day. One evening, the city was glowing under the fading orange of sunset. They ended up on the same pier where they had first talked at the gallery. The air smelled of salt and rain, and the sea moved gently beneath the wooden planks. Daniel leaned on the railing, camera in hand, taking photos of the skyline reflected in the water, Emma stood beside him, arms crossed to stay warm. "You always carry that camera," she said. He smiled. "It's how I see the world. I'm afraid I'll miss something if I don't." She looked at him, studying the way the light hit his face. "Maybe that's why your pictures feel alive," she said softly. "You don't just take photos. You see moments." He looked at her, then really looked. For a moment, neither spoke. There was something in his eyes that made her chest tighten. Warmth, curiosity, maybe even something deeper. Then he looked away, breaking the tension with a gentle laugh. "You talk like an artist yourself." Emma smiled, feeling her face warm. "Maybe I just notice things." Daniel lowered his camera, letting it hang by his side. "You do," he said quietly. "You notice what others overlook." The sky deepened into purple and blue. The city lights flickered to life, and they stood there in silence, watching ferries glide across the water. Daniel began talking about his father, how he had taught him photography before passing away from a sudden illness. He said that after losing him, the camera became his way to remember beauty when life didn't make sense. Emma listened closely, her heart aching for him. "I'm sorry," she said softly. He shrugged lightly, his expression calm but sad. "It's okay. Pain changes shape, but it never really leaves. You just learn to walk with it." She nodded, understanding more than she wanted to admit. "I think that's true for everyone. We all carry something." That night, she couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the way Daniel had spoken, the softness in his tone, the quiet strength behind his sadness. It wasn't pity she felt. It was connection. He wasn't trying to hide his past, and that made her trust him even more. Over the next few weeks, their meetings became a habit. Sometimes they'd cook together in Emma's kitchen, laughing over burnt pancakes or uneven pasta. Other times, Daniel would show her his photo collections, train tracks disappearing into fog, children running through puddles, old buildings that looked forgotten but alive. He had a way of seeing meaning in ordinary things, and Emma began noticing how much that mirrored the way she felt about life. She wasn't looking for perfection. She wanted truth in all its quiet, messy beauty. One night after dinner, they sat on the balcony of her apartment. The city lights shimmered below, and the air smelled faintly of rain. Daniel leaned back in his chair and asked, "Do you ever feel like life is waiting for something to happen?" Emma smiled sadly. "All the time. Like I'm standing in a hallway, waiting for a door to open." He looked at her thoughtfully. "Maybe the door's already open. You're just afraid to walk through." She met his gaze, and for a brief moment, the world went still. There was a pull between them. Unspoken, but unmistakable. Emma felt her heart beat faster, but she didn't move closer. It wasn't fear that held her back. It was the delicate beauty of the moment itself. Then Daniel said softly, "You know, Emma, I think the best things in life arrive quietly. You almost miss them if you're not paying attention." She looked at him, her voice barely a whisper. "Maybe that's how I found you?" His expression softened, but he didn't respond. Instead, he looked out over the city, smiling faintly as if he'd heard her heart, even if she hadn't said more. The evening ended, like many others, with a simple goodbye at her door. But when Emma closed it behind her, she leaned against the wall, her hand resting on her chest. Something was changing. She could feel it. Daniel wasn't just another person in her life. He was becoming the quiet heartbeat behind her days. She didn't know where it was heading, and maybe that was what made it so real. In the stillness of that night, as rain began tapping softly on her window again, Emma finally understood something she had forgotten for years. Love doesn't always come loudly. Sometimes it walks beside you quietly until you finally notice it was there all along. And deep down, she knew this could be what she'd always wanted. The weeks that followed were some of the happiest Emma could remember. Her days began to revolve around small moments. Morning texts from Daniel. Their weekend walks through the market. Quiet evenings spent talking until the city lights blurred into the night. It wasn't a grand love story filled with drama or promises. It was simple, steady, and real. Emma had finally stopped searching. She was just living, and that felt new. But life, as it often does, found a way to test what seemed unshakable. One evening, Daniel invited Emma to a coffee shop near the harbor. His message had been short. Need to talk. 6 p.m.? Words sat heavy in her chest. When she arrived, she found him sitting by the window, his usual calm replaced by something uncertain. He smiled when he saw her, but his eyes told a different story. "Hey," she greeted softly, sitting across from him. "Hey," he replied, trying to sound normal. Then came the silence. That kind of silence that doesn't come from comfort, but from the weight of something waiting to be said. Finally, Daniel took a deep breath. "I got an offer," he said. "A big one." Emma's heart tightened. "For your photography." He nodded. "A magazine wants me to cover a year-long project across Europe. Landscapes, people, stories. It's huge, Emma. The kind of opportunity I've been waiting for." For a moment, she didn't say anything. Her mind filled with pictures, Daniel on foreign streets, new cities, new faces, a whole world far from her. She smiled weakly. "That's amazing, Daniel. You deserve it." He studied her face carefully, his voice quieter now. "But it means I'd have to leave in a few weeks." Emma forced a nod. "You should go," she said, even though every word felt like it scraped against her heart. "This is your dream." "I don't want to lose what we have," he said. "But I also can't let this go." "I know," she said. "You shouldn't." They sat there staring at their untouched coffee. Emma wanted to tell him not to leave, to ask him to stay and choose her instead. But deep down, she knew she couldn't be that person. Love to her wasn't a cage. It was the courage to let someone fly, even if it left you alone on the ground when they walked out of the cafe. The sun had set, and the city lights shimmered on wet streets. Daniel walked her to her car, neither of them speaking much. Before she opened the door, he turned to her. "Emma," he said softly, "you've changed how I see things. You make everything feel still, like peace." Her throat tightened. "Then promise me you'll take that peace with you." He reached up, brushing a strand of hair from her face, his hand lingering just long enough for her to feel the warmth of it. "You're the calm I didn't know I needed," he whispered. She wanted to tell him she felt the same, but the words wouldn't come. Maybe because she knew that saying them out loud would make the goodbye too real. So she just smiled, the kind of smile that holds back tears, and said, "Go chase your dream, Daniel." And he did. The next few weeks moved like a blur. Emma threw herself into work, convincing everyone and herself that she was fine. They messaged at first, sending photos, small updates, little jokes. But as days turned into months, messages came less often. Time zones, schedules, new places, they all built quiet walls between them. Some nights, Emma scrolled through his old photos, the ones he'd taken in Seattle, the ones where she had been standing just off frame. She missed the sound of his laughter, the way he listened without judgment, the gentle calm he brought into her world. But she also felt proud. He was doing what he loved, and she wanted that for him, even if it meant missing him every day. One rainy evening, Emma visited the same pier where they used to walk. The city was quiet, and the water shimmered under the streetlights. She stood there for a long time, watching the waves crash softly against the wood. For the first time, she allowed herself to cry. Not because of heartbreak, but because she realized she had loved him, selflessly. In the months that followed, Emma slowly learned to live again. She focused on her work, took weekend trips with Mia, and even started teaching art classes to kids at a local community center. But no matter how full her days seemed, a part of her heart still carried Daniel's voice, calm, warm, steady. Seasons changed. Spring returned, and with it, life seemed to bloom again. One evening, as Emma was sketching by her window, her phone buzzed with a message. The name on the screen made her heart stop. "Daniel, I'm back. At the gallery. Come." That was all it said. 6 words that sent her heartbeat racing. She stared at the screen, unsure what to feel. He had been gone almost a year. What did this mean? Why now? 1,000 thoughts filled her mind. Maybe he just wanted to catch up. Maybe he was leaving again. Or maybe... She didn't finish the thought. She just grabbed her coat and ran out into the rain. The city looked alive again, just like that night they met. As she drove toward the gallery, her mind replayed everything. The first painting, their walks, the pier, that final touch on her cheek. She realized that, even after all the distance, her heart had never stopped waiting. When she reached the gallery, she paused outside for a moment, catching her breath. Through the glass, she could see the familiar warm lights, the quiet crowd moving from one painting to another. And then, there he was, standing exactly where he had been that first day. In front of the harbor painting, he looked different, a little older, a little tired, but when he turned and saw her, his expression softened into something achingly familiar. Emma took a step forward, her pulse quickening. She didn't know what he was about to say, but every part of her wanted to hear it. Maybe this was her second chance. Maybe this was what she had been waiting for all along. As she walked closer, Daniel's eyes met hers, full of emotion, full of stories he hadn't told yet. The space between them felt smaller than ever, filled with all the unsaid words of the past year. Emma stopped just a few feet away, her voice barely steady. "You're really back." He smiled faintly, his voice low. "Yeah, and I came to find you." Before she could ask why, he added softly, "There's something I should have said before I left." Her breath caught as his words hung in the air, heavy, unfinished, promising something she hadn't dared to hope for again. And in that moment, surrounded by the same quiet art and soft light where it had all begun, Emma realized something. This wasn't the end of their story. It was the moment before everything changed again. The moment before the truth finally arrived. The rain fell softly that evening, painting Seattle in silver reflections. The sound was familiar, steady.com, the same rhythm that had followed every turning point in Emma's life. She stood at the entrance of the gallery, heart pounding. It had been almost a year since Daniel left, and now he was here again, waiting. The same gallery where everything began. She stepped inside. The room was filled with soft music and low murmurs from visitors admiring the art. Her eyes scanned the walls until they found him, standing in front of that same painting of the harbor at dusk. The same scene that had first brought them together. Only this time, it wasn't coincidence. He had called her there. Daniel turned before she could speak, as if he'd sensed her presence. His expression softened, quiet mix of relief and something deeper, something she hadn't seen in his eyes before. "Emma," he said gently, taking a step closer. "I didn't think you'd come." "I almost didn't," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I didn't know what this meant." He nodded slowly. "I wasn't sure either, but I had to see you. There's something I need to tell you, something I should have said before I left." The words hung in the air, and for a second, neither moved. The noise of the gallery faded around them. Emma could feel her heart racing, a mix of fear and longing. Daniel continued quietly. "I went to Europe thinking I could chase my dream and come back the same person. But the truth is, every beautiful place I saw, every photograph I took, it all felt empty without you. I'd look at sunsets, cities, strangers, and all I could think was how you would have seen them differently. You see the quiet things in the world, Emma. You see peace where others see nothing. And I missed that. I missed you." Kama blinked fast, her eyes glistening. "You had your dream, Daniel. You did what you were meant to do." He smiled softly, shaking his head. "Maybe, but I realized something. Dreams aren't just about places or success. They're about people who make them mean something." For a long moment, they just stood there, to people who had waited through time and silence to find the same moment again. Emma took a step closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "You didn't forget me?" Daniel let out a small laugh, full of emotion. "Forget you? I tried. Believe me, I tried to focus on work, on travel, on everything else. But every time I framed a picture, I found myself wishing you were there beside me." She swallowed hard, her heart breaking open in the most gentle way. "I thought you moved on. I told myself you deserved someone who could travel with you, someone who wasn't afraid to leave." Daniel looked at her, his gaze steady. "Maybe I did meet people, but no one felt like home. You did. Those words hit her harder than she expected. She'd spent months convincing herself that what they had was just a fleeting connection, something beautiful but temporary. Yet here he was, proving her wrong. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small photograph. It was a picture of the same harbor painting they were standing in front of. But in the corner of the photo, there was something new. Emma's reflection from that night a year ago. Faint, but there. "I found this photo while organizing my files," he said, handing it to her. "I didn't even notice your reflection until recently. But when I did, I realized that from the very start, you were part of every moment that mattered." Emma looked at the photo, then at him, her voice shaking slightly. "You kept it all this time." He smiled. "It reminded me of where it all began. And I promised myself that if I ever came back, I'd find you. Not just to say thank you, but to tell you that you're what I've always wanted." She felt her eyes fill with tears. "Daniel," she whispered, "I don't even know what to say." "Say that it's not too late," he said softly. "Say that, maybe, we still have a chance." For a long second, the world went quiet. The sounds of the gallery, the soft rain outside, everything blurred into silence. Emma's mind flashed with memories the first time they met. Their walks by the pier, his laughter, his goodbye. Every piece of her life since then had felt incomplete. Like a story paused mid-sentence. She looked up, her voice steady but full of feeling. "I waited for something real my whole life. I didn't know what it was until I met you. You made the quiet moments feel alive again." Daniel stepped closer, his hand brushing hers gently. "Then let's waste any more time." They stood close, their faces just inches apart. No grand gestures, no dramatic declarations, just two people who finally understood what they had almost lost. Emma felt warmth rush through her as she whispered, "This is what I always wanted, and luckily I got it that day." Daniel smiled, his eyes glistening. "Then let's not lose it again." He took her hand, and for the first time in a long while, Emma felt peace. The kind she had spent years searching for. The kind that came quietly, without warning. And stayed. They walked together through the gallery, pausing in front of the photographs Daniel had taken during his travels. Each picture had its own story. Sunrises, quiet villages, faces of strangers. But to Emma, they all seemed to lead back to one moment, the day they met. Daniel looked at her as they stopped near the last frame. "I used to think my work was about capturing stillness," he said. "Now I know it's about finding it." "You're my stillness, Emma." She smiled, tears of joy and disbelief mixing on her cheeks. "And you're my reason to see the world differently." Outside, the rain kept falling, soft and endless. As they stepped out into the night, Daniel pulled out his camera. "One last picture," he said, raising it. Emma laughed softly. "Of what?" "Of us," he said. "Of this moment." She leaned close, and the camera clicked, freezing the second forever to people standing under the same rain that once brought them together later. As they walked hand in hand toward her car, Emma looked up at the sky and whispered, "It's strange, isn't it? How life brings you back to where you started, just so you can see it differently." Daniel smiled. "Maybe that's how you know it's meant to be." And in that quiet, rain-soaked street surrounded by the glow of city lights, Emma realized something she had always known deep inside. Love doesn't always arrive with thunder. Sometimes it comes softly, like rain on a window, and stays long after the storm has passed. That night, she didn't dream of what could have been. She lived it. Because for once, life had given her exactly what she'd always wanted, and she was wise enough to hold on to it.